The lights in the Galactic Council chamber were bright and cold. Joanne stood at the center podium with her hands clasped behind her back. She wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face showed nothing as she listened to the alien voices around her. The council chamber was enormous. It could hold representatives from all 47 member species of the Galactic Council. Today, every seat was filled. This was an important vote. A vote about humanity. Speaker Velmoroth stood at the highest platform. Velmoroth was a crystalline being, tall and sharp like living glass. Light passed through their body and created rainbow patterns on the walls. Velmoroth's voice was like wind chimes when they spoke. "We gathered today to address the human question," Velmoroth announced. "Many species have brought complaints. We must decide if humanity should remain a full member of this council." Guan had heard these complaints before. For months, different alien species had been speaking against humans at council meetings. The Thomases were reptilian creatures with scales that changed color with their moods. Right now, their scales showed angry red patterns. Their representative Krova stood and pointed one clawed finger at Guan. "Human traders are destroying our economy," Krovas hissed. "They undercut our prices. They make deals we cannot match. They do not respect the traditional trading systems we have used for thousands of years." Next came the Ven. The Ven had no solid bodies. They were clouds of gas held together by energy fields and contained in special suits. Their representative, Thisser, floated upward and spoke in a voice that buzzed like static. "Humans expand too fast. They build colonies and systems we plan to develop. They do not wait. They do not ask permission. They act like the galaxy belongs to them." The Krell representative spoke next. The Krell looked like giant insects with multiple arms and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans could not imagine. Their civilization was built on efficiency and order. "Humans are too aggressive," the Krell said. "When pirates attacked our mining operation, humans destroyed the pirate ships completely. They did not capture them. They did not follow proper protocols. They simply eliminated the threat. This violence is not civilized." One by one, species stood and complained. Humans were too creative. Humans changed things too much. Humans did not follow the old ways. Humans made other species uncomfortable. Giwan listened to all of it. She had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years. She had heard variations of these complaints many times. But today was different. Today, there would be a vote. Finally, Velmorath called for order. "The proposal is clear. Humanity's council membership will be revoked. Humans will be restricted to their home system. Human ships will be banned from neutral space. Human colonies outside the Sol system will have 1 standard year to relocate. Does any species wish to speak in humanity's defense?" 7 species raised their markers. They were small species, ones that humans had helped over the years. The Eula, who were peaceful plant-like beings. The Quellan, who were water dwellers. A few others. But their voices were quiet, and their influence was limited. The Thomas's representative laughed. A sound like rocks grinding together. "Of course, the weak ones defend the humans. Humans have been protecting them, doing their work for them. Let us see how they manage without their pets." Giwan felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. She had been trained for this. Earth had known this vote might come. The Council had been turning against humanity for years. It started small, with minor complaints and petty restrictions. But it had grown. The truth was simple. Humanity had been too successful. In 300 years since joining the Galactic Council, humans had gone from newcomers to major players. Human trade networks were efficient. Human colonies were prosperous. Human innovations had improved life across dozens of worlds, and many of the older species resented it. They wanted humans to be servants, not equals. They wanted human cleverness to solve their problems, but they did not want humans to have power or influence. When humans refused to accept that role, when humans insisted on being treated as full members, the resentment grew. "We will now vote," Velmoroth announced. "All in favor of revoking humanity's council membership and restricting them to their home system." Lights began appearing on the great board behind Velmorith. Each light represented a species vote. Green for yes, red for no. The lights came quickly. Green, green, green. A few reds scattered among them. More greens. G1 watched the board fill with light. She counted silently. 13 green lights. 7 red lights. 1 yellow light for abstention. It was done. Velmorith turned to face. Juan, the crystalline being, seemed almost surprised that the vote had passed so easily. Perhaps Velmorith had expected more resistance. Ambassador Juan, Velmorith said, "The Council has spoken. Humanity's membership is revoked. You have 30 days to remove all human presence from Council space. Do you wish to appeal this decision?" The chamber grew quiet. Everyone watched Juan. They expected her to argue, to beg, to make angry speeches about injustice, to threaten consequences. G1 did none of these things. She straightened her uniform and looked directly at Velmorith. Her voice was calm and professional when she spoke. "The human delegation acknowledges the Council's decision. Earth will comply with all terms immediately. We will begin withdrawal procedures within the hour. We thank the Council for the 3 centuries of membership and wish all species well in their future endeavors." She picked up her data tablet from the podium. She bowed once, a formal gesture that showed respect without submission. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the silent chamber. Behind her, confused whispers started. That was not the reaction they expected. Where was the anger? Where was the desperation? Why was she not fighting? Giwan reached the door and paused. She looked back one last time at the council chamber, at the 47 species who had just voted to cast humanity out. Her expression was still neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not sadness. Something else. Something that might have been pity. Then she walked through the door, and it closed behind her with a soft sound. In the council chamber, the whispers grew louder. Some species felt triumphant. Others felt uneasy. The EULA representative Sylvan watched the closed door with a sad expression. "I think," Sylvan said quietly to no one in particular, "we have made a terrible mistake." But nobody was listening. The first human ships left within 12 hours of the vote. By the end of the first day, every major human settlement had received orders from Earth. The message was simple and clear. Pack everything. Pay all debts. Complete all contracts. Leave nothing behind that could be used as an excuse for further action against humanity. And then come home. Captain Hyun commanded a fleet of 15 trade vessels based at Belvorian Station. The station orbited a gas giant in the Belver system and served as a major trading hub for the entire sector. High-end ships had been coming to this station for 20 years. He knew every dock worker by name. He had friends here. But orders were orders. He walked into the office of Portmaster Yellen. Yellen was a Belvorian, which meant he looked something like an upright bear with 6 eyes and blue fur. Yellen had always been fair in his dealings with humans, Yuan Yellen said when he saw the captain. His voice sounded worried. "I heard about the council vote. Surely you are not leaving?" "We are leaving," Hayan said. He placed a credit chip on Yellen's desk. "This covers all docking fees for the next 6 months, even though we will be gone in 3 days. It also includes compensation for the early termination of our warehouse lease." Yellen stared at the credit chip. "But your contracts? You have deals with 17 different trading companies. You cannot just abandon them." "We are not abandoning them," Hyun replied. "We are completing every single contract. We are delivering all promised goods. We are paying penalty fees for any future contracts that must be canceled. Everything will be done properly and legally." "This is crazy," Yellen said. His fur was turning darker, which meant he was upset. "Your ships handle 40% of the agricultural products that come through this station. What will we do without you?" Hyun felt sympathy for Yellen. The portmaster was a good person caught in a bad situation, but sympathy would not change anything. "The council has decided that humans should not be in neutral space," Hyun said quietly. "We are simply obeying their decision. Perhaps other traders will fill the gap we leave behind." "Other traders charge triple your rates," Yellen protested. and they are not reliable like your people. Hyun, please? There must be another way. I am sorry, Hyun said, and he truly was. My orders come from Earth. All humans are going home. 3 days later, Hyun's fleet departed Belvorian Station. Every ship was loaded with goods and equipment. Nothing was left behind. As his lead ship pulled away from the dock, Hyun looked back at the station through his viewport. He had been coming here since he was a young officer. Now he would never see it again. His communications officer, a woman named Yoonji, came to stand beside him. Sir, we are receiving messages from 43 different companies. They want to negotiate. They are offering better terms if we stay. Tell them we appreciate their offers, but we cannot accept, Hyun said. We are going home. The same scene was happening across the galaxy. On the industrial world of Krell 7, human engineers were packing their tools. On the medical station Sanctuary, human doctors were training their replacements as quickly as possible. On dozens of colony worlds, human farmers and miners and teachers were saying goodbye to neighbors they had known for years. On Plentos 4, a young engineer named Doyen worked 18-hour days trying to teach the local Plentosians how to maintain the irrigation systems. Plentos 4 was an agricultural world. 70% of its irrigation network had been designed by humans over the past 30 years. The Plentosians were insect-like beings, good at following procedures, but not good at adapting when things went wrong. Doyon had been on Plentos for 4 or 5 years. He knew these systems better than anyone. He must monitor pressure in Sector 7. Doyon explained to a Plentosian technician named Klekit. If it drops below 40%, you need to reroute water through the secondary channels. But why does pressure drop? Klekit asked. His mandibles clicked nervously. Many reasons, Doyon said patiently. Sediment buildup. Pipe degradation. Pump failure. You must check all possibilities. How do we check? Doyon pulled up a diagnostic program on his tablet. This software will guide you. I am leaving copies for all your technicians. But you must practice while I am still here to help. They worked through the procedures again and again. Klekit tried his best, but Doyon could see the fear in the Plentosian's compound eyes. 5 years of knowledge could not be transferred in 1 week. But 1 week was all they had. On the last day, Klekit brought Doyon a gift. It was a crystal sculpture, traditional Plentosian art. Please do not go, Klekit said. We need you here. Doyon accepted the gift carefully. He was surprised to find himself emotional. I will miss working with you, my friend. But I have no choice. The Council has decided. The Council is wrong, Klekit said fiercely. Everyone knows it. Why do humans obey a wrong decision? Because, Doyon said softly, if we do not obey, they will say we are the problem. They will say, humans cannot follow rules. This way, they cannot blame us. They can only blame themselves. He boarded the transport ship with the last group of human engineers. As the ship lifted off, he looked down at the irrigation network spreading across the planet's surface like veins. He had been proud of that work. Now he wondered how long it would last without proper maintenance. Back on Belvorian Station, Portmaster Yellen was discovering what it meant to lose 40% of agricultural trade. The other traders Haon had mentioned were raising their prices. Shortages were beginning. Yellen sent urgent messages to the Galactic Council asking them to make an exception for human traders. The Council said no. Rules were rules. On the frontier world of Taxis 3, colonists watched human security patrols depart. For decades, human ships had protected this region from pirates. The Galactic Council considered these frontier areas too remote and too poor to deserve official protection. So humans had done it themselves, voluntarily. Now those ships were leaving. Within a month, pirates attacked a Thomas's mining colony in the same sector. The colony's distress call reached Captain Minho, commanded the human patrol ship Steady Dawn. The Steady Dawn was 3 hours away from the attack. Minho could have helped. His crew wanted to help, but his orders were absolute. Humans were to remain in their own space. They were not to interfere in council affairs. Minho listened to the distress call. He heard the fear in the voices. He recorded the coordinates. He forwarded everything to Galactic Council's security. Then he turned his ship toward home. It took Council security 2 days to arrive. By then, the Thomases colony had fallen. 73 Thomases died. The pirates escaped with valuable ore. The Thomases government protested to the Council. Why had humans not responded? The Council explained that humans were restricted to their home system. The Thomases had voted for that restriction. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Humans left. Problems emerged. And slowly, very slowly, the Council began to understand that humanity had been holding many things together. Things that were now falling apart. 3 months after the vote, the Venn Collective called an emergency meeting. Their atmospheric processors were failing. This was a crisis. The Venn had no solid bodies. They existed as gas clouds held together by electromagnetic fields. The processors created the specific atmospheric mix that Venn needed to survive. Without them, Venn colonies would die. Desser, the Venn representative who had complained about human expansion, now spoke very differently in the council chamber. "We need human technicians," Desser said. The static in their voice sounded desperate. "Our own engineers cannot fix the processors. The systems are too complex. They were designed by humans 30 years ago, and only humans fully understand them." Speaker Velmorith considered this. "Send a formal request to Earth. Offer them payment." The request went to Earth. The response came back within hours. It was polite, but firm. Humanity was restricted to their home system by council order. Therefore, human technicians could not travel to Venn space. Earth apologized for any inconvenience. "This is ridiculous," Visser buzzed angrily. "We are willing to pay. We are willing to make an exception." "The council made the rule," Velmorith replied. "Humans are simply following it." "Then change the rule," Visser demanded. But changing council rules required another vote. And many species were not yet ready to admit they had made a mistake. The Thomases representative argued that the Venn should train their own technicians. The Krell representative suggested the Venn hire engineers from other species. Desser tried both options, but Venn technology was specialized. Other species did not understand it, and training new technicians would take years. The processors were failing now. In the end, the Venn managed to keep their systems running at reduced capacity. 3 smaller colonies had to be evacuated because their processors could not be fixed. Thousands of Venn had to relocate. It was not a catastrophe, but it was painful and expensive. And it could have been avoided. Similar problems appeared across the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the largest trading station in Council space, commerce dropped by 23% in just 2 months. Station Administrator Quellis could not understand why. Then an economic analyst showed him the data. Humans had been intermediaries. Many species would not trade directly with each other. The Thomases hated the Krell. The Krell distrusted the Belvorians. The Belvorians had religious prohibitions against dealing with certain other species. These grudges were ancient, going back thousands of years. Humans had not cared about these old grudges. Humans would buy from the Thomases and sell to the Krell. They would carry goods between species that refused to meet. They were neutral bridges in a galaxy full of ancient hatreds. Now those bridges were gone. Trade routes that had been efficient suddenly became complicated. Ships had to make multiple stops. Costs increased. Some trades simply stopped happening because the parties involved would not work together without human intermediaries. Quellis sent a report to the council. The report warned that galactic trade might contract by as much as 20% if the situation continued. The council filed the report, but took no action. Surely the market would adjust. Surely other species would step in to fill the role humans had played, but they did not. Or they could not. On the industrial world of Krell 7, production overseer Velka was having a terrible year. Manufacturing output had dropped to 60% of previous levels. This made no sense. The Krell were master manufacturers. Their factories were the most efficient in the galaxy. They had been building things for 10,000 years before humans even developed spaceflight. Velka reviewed the production logs obsessively. The factories were running the same as always. The workers were performing their tasks correctly. Everything should have been fine. Then Velka noticed something strange. The factories had lots of small delays. A part would arrive 3 hours late, causing a production line to stop. A quality control check would reveal a defect, requiring a batch to be remade. A machine would break down, and replacement parts would be out of stock. Individually, these were minor issues. But they happened constantly, and they added up. Velka pulled older logs from when humans had been present. The same types of problems had occurred back then, but somehow they had not caused delays. Velka dug deeper and discovered why. There had been a human efficiency consultant named Ginwoo working on Krell 7. Ginwoo had made hundreds of small suggestions over 3 years. He had recommended keeping extra stock of certain parts. He had suggested rearranging production schedules to avoid bottlenecks. He had noticed that 2 different factory lines needed the same resource at the same time and had shifted their schedules so they did not conflict. The Krell had implemented these suggestions, but had not really understood them. They had called them human intuition and had been slightly dismissive. Shortcuts and tricks, not proper engineering. Now Jinwoo was gone, and the Krell realized those shortcuts had been preventing exactly the problems they were now experiencing. The Krell could build magnificent machines, but humans had understood the complicated dance of making everything work together smoothly. Velka tried to recreate what Jinwoo had done, but it was like trying to see around corners. Jinwoo had somehow anticipated problems before they happened. Velka could only react after problems occurred. Production stayed at 60%. Velka's reports to the Krell leadership grew increasingly frustrated. Medical stations reported similar issues. Dr. Sujin had been a xenobiologist specializing in cross-species immune disorders. She had worked at Sanctuary Medical Station for 15 years. The galaxy had 47 different species. Sometimes their biologies interacted in unexpected ways. An infection harmless to Krell might be deadly to Belvorians. A medication safe for Thomases might cause allergic reactions, and YULA.SUJIN had maintained a massive database of these interactions. She had consulted on thousands of cases. She had prevented outbreaks and saved countless lives. Other doctors had considered her work routine. Specialists were common in medical fields, but after she left, 12 species experienced disease outbreaks within 6 months. These were not new diseases. They were known problems that should have been caught early, but the doctors who remained did not have Sujin's comprehensive knowledge. They did not see the patterns she would have noticed. A Belvorian child died from a medication interaction that Sujin would have flagged immediately. A Eula colony suffered from a fungal infection that spread because quarantine procedures were implemented 3 days too late. Sujin would have recognized the symptoms on day 1. Medical efficiency across the galaxy dropped by 40%. The Galactic Medical Network sent urgent requests to Earth asking for medical personnel to return. Earth replied that it could not send personnel outside human space without Council authorization. The Council discussed it. Some species wanted to authorize exceptions for medical personnel, but the Thomas's representative objected. If they made exceptions for doctors, they would have to make exceptions for engineers and traders and security forces. Before long, the whole restriction would be meaningless. The vote failed. Medical efficiency remained at 60% of what it had been. By month 6, the reports reaching the council chamber were impossible to ignore. Trade down 18%. Medical crises increasing. Frontier security collapsed. Infrastructure failing across dozens of worlds. Speaker Velmorith called a private meeting with senior council members. They reviewed the data together in a small chamber, away from public observation. This is temporary, Crevasse of the Thomases insisted. His scales showed stubborn orange patterns. We simply need time to adjust. 6 months is not enough time, asked Quellen Representative Miras. Her water-filled environment suit bubbled softly as she spoke. How much time do we need? These problems are not critical, Kravis argued. They are inconveniences. 73 Thomases died at your mining colony, Miras pointed out. Your own people? That was pirates, Crevasse said. Not the absence of humans. The humans would have stopped the pirates, Mira's replied. The argument continued, but privately, most council members were beginning to worry. The galaxy had functioned smoothly for 300 years with humans as members. Now, after just 6 months without them, cracks were appearing everywhere. Velmorath made a decision. We will contact Earth, informally. We will inquire about limited cooperation on specific issues. The message went to Earth's Secretary of External Affairs, a man named J1. His response was brief. Humanity is focused on internal development within our home system, as per Council directive. We are not accepting diplomatic communications at this time. Velmorath read the message 3 times. The words were polite, but the meaning was clear. Humans were not coming back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The Galactic Emergency Response Center occupied an entire deck of Council Station. Coordinator Quelvin had run this center for 40 years. Qualvin was a Thomas's, but unlike most of their species, Qualvin cared more about efficiency than pride. They were good at their job. Right now, Qualvin was staring at a disaster map that looked worse every day. Red markers showed active crises. Yellow markers showed developing problems. The map was covered in markers. Explain this to me again, Qualvin said to their assistant, a Quellan named Riss. Why are response times 3 times slower than last year? Riss manipulated the display, pulling up personnel records. We have lost 37% of our rapid response teams. Almost all of them were humans. Qualvin's scales shifted to confused blue. Humans were only 15% of total emergency personnel, Riss said. But they volunteered for higher risk assignments at much higher rates. When disasters occurred in dangerous locations or hostile environments, humans were usually the first to volunteer. Other species were more cautious. Quelvin looked at the data more carefully. Riss was right. When reactor failures happened, humans had been the ones willing to go into radioactive environments. When asteroid impacts devastated remote colonies, humans had rushed to help even though those colonies belonged to species that had never been particularly friendly to humanity. Qualvin had never thought about it before. It had just seemed normal that humans were always available for disaster relief. Now they were not available, and the difference was dramatic. A new alert flashed on the screen. Belvorian colony, massive flooding, immediate assistance required. Qualvin checked available response teams. The closest team was 16 hours away. Before there had been human ships in that sector. They could have been there in 4 hours. Qualvin authorized the deployment, but knew 16 hours was too long. People would die waiting, and there was nothing Qualvin could do about it. Across the station, Scala Minseo worked in the archives of collective knowledge. Minseo was human, one of the few still in council space. Archivists had been granted an exemption because the archives were considered neutral ground, not part of any species territory. Minseo had been at the archives for 20 years, cataloging the contributions of each council species. Recently, the council had asked her to compile a report. They wanted to understand exactly what roles humans had played in galactic civilization. They needed to know what they had lost. Minseo worked on the report for 3 weeks. What she found surprised even her. Humans had not invented most galactic technologies. The Krell had better manufacturing. The Ven understood atmospheric science more deeply. The Thomases had superior weapons technology. In most individual fields, humans were not the best, but humans excelled at integration, at making different systems work together, at solving problems that crossed multiple disciplines. The Krell could build perfect machines, but they thought in straight lines. They struggled with problems that required lateral thinking. The Ven understood gas dynamics brilliantly, but had trouble with solid-state physics. The Thomases were excellent warriors, but poor diplomats. Humans were good at everything. Not the best at any one thing, but competent at all things. And more importantly, humans could talk to everyone. They could understand Krell precision and Ven abstraction and Thomas's aggression. They could translate not just languages, but concepts. Minseo realized that humans had been the connective tissue of the council. They had been the universal translators, the bridge builders. The people who made a civilization of 47 different species actually function as one. She finished her report and submitted it to the council. She wondered if they would understand what it meant. The council held an emergency session to review Mincio's report. Representatives from all 47 species attended. The mood was tense. Velmorath presented the key findings. Scholar Mincio has identified what she calls integration roles. These are positions where humans facilitated cooperation between different species or different disciplines. According to her analysis, humans held 68% of all integration roles despite being only 12% of the population. What does that mean practically? Asked a representative from one of the smaller species. It means, Velmorath said slowly, that humans were not just participants in our civilization. They were the glue holding it together. The chamber erupted in argument. The Thomases insisted this was an exaggeration. The Krell claimed other species could learn integration skills. The Ven argued that technology could replace human mediators, but the data was clear. In the year since humans left, galactic civilization was breaking down. Trade was down 22%. Medical crises had doubled. Crime in frontier regions had increased by 300%. Infrastructure failures were constant. And old conflicts between species were reigniting. The Thomases and Krell had started fighting again. It began as trade disputes but escalated quickly. There had been 3 small military skirmishes already. Before human diplomats would have mediated these disputes, now there were no human diplomats, and no other species was neutral enough to mediate effectively. Quelvin's Disaster Response Center was overwhelmed. Colony projects were being abandoned across the galaxy. Stations that humans had managed now operated at half capacity. Meanwhile, long-range sensors showed intense activity in human space. Something big was happening in the Sol system. Massive construction projects. New colonies being established on moons and asteroids. Energy signatures suggesting advanced research. Intelligence Officer Kung Su prepared a classified report for the Council. Leadership. Kung Su was human, but he had been recruited by Council intelligence decades ago. He was loyal to his job. But watching his species be cast out had been painful. His report analyzed what humanity was doing in isolation. The conclusions were striking. Humanity is not struggling, Kung Su wrote. They are thriving. Without the need to coordinate with other species, their projects are advancing rapidly. They are developing technologies we have never seen. They are building infrastructure at rates that should be impossible. And they are doing it all without us. He included detailed analysis. Humans had lost access to Krell manufacturing, but they had built their own advanced factories. They had lost access to Ven atmospheric processors, but they had developed alternative life support systems. For every capability, they had relied on other species to provide. Humans had created their own version, and in some cases, human versions were better, because humans were not bound by the traditional methods that other species insisted on using. Kung Su's report included one more observation. Humanity is adapting to isolation far better than the galaxy is adapting to their absence. We need them more than they need us, and they know it. The report was classified at the highest level. Only senior council members saw it. But it could not be hidden forever. Information always leaked. Within weeks, the news spread through the council. Humans were not suffering. Humans were not begging to return. Humans were building something new, something entirely their own. This changed everything. The council had assumed humans would eventually come crawling back, desperate for reinstatement. The strategy had been to make humans wait, to make them understand their place in the galactic order. But humans were not waiting. They were moving on. Velmorath called another private meeting. This time, even Crevasse of the Thomases looked worried. His scales showed gray uncertainty. "We must act," Velmorath said. "The situation is deteriorating. Crime is rising. Trade is collapsing. Species are beginning to fight each other. We need stability. We need integration. We need humans. We need to vote to reinstate their council membership," suggested Miraz of the Quellen. "Will they accept?" asked another representative. After we cast them out, nobody had an answer to that question. The humans had been silent for a year. They had sent no complaints, no arguments, no pleas. Just silence It was the most devastating response possible, because in that silence, the galaxy was hearing the truth. Humans had never needed the Council's approval. The Council had needed humanity's patience, innovation, and willingness to do the work nobody else wanted to do. "Send them a message," Velmorith ordered. "Tell them we wish to discuss their return to the Council. Be diplomatic. Be respectful." The message was sent, and then the Council waited. Waited to see if humanity would even bother to respond. The response came 3 days later from Secretary Jawan. It was brief and formal. "Humanity appreciates the Council's message. We will consider it. Please allow us time to consult with our government." That was all. Nothing more. The Council members who read it understood the subtext. Humans were making them wait, making them worry, making them understand what it felt like to be powerless and hoping for favor. It was a reversal neither side had expected. And the Council was finally beginning to understand the price of pride. 1 year after the vote, the Council chamber filled once again. This time, no one looked triumphant. The representatives sat in their seats with expressions ranging from worried to desperate. Speaker Velmorith's crystalline body seemed duller, as if the light passing through had dimmed. The galaxy was fracturing. That was the only word for it. Trade had collapsed by 28%. Some trade routes had simply stopped functioning. Species that had done business together for centuries were now unable to reach agreements without human intermediaries. Ancient grudges kept in check for generations were flaring up again. The Thomases and Krell were fighting openly now. 3 border stations had been destroyed. Hundreds were dead. The Council had tried to mediate, but neither side would accept any other species as a neutral arbitrator. The Thomases hated the Quellan. The Krell distrusted the Vin. Everyone had old conflicts with everyone else. Humans had been the only truly neutral party. And now they were gone. Medical stations across the galaxy operated at half capacity. Disease outbreaks that should have been routine were turning into epidemics. Not because the diseases were more dangerous, because the medical knowledge humans had maintained was scattered and incomplete. Doctors were relearning things the hard way. Patients were dying while they learned. Frontier security had completely collapsed. Piracy was rampant. Criminal organizations had taken over entire sectors that human patrols used to protect. Council security forces could not cover the territory. They had never needed to before. The economic data was catastrophic. Stations humans had managed were operating at 40% capacity or less. Some had been abandoned entirely. Colony projects were failing. Infrastructure was degrading faster than it could be repaired. The carefully balanced galactic economy that had grown and prospered for 300 years was contracting rapidly. Economists predicted it would take decades to recover, even if problems were fixed immediately. But the problems were not being fixed. They were getting worse. Velmorith stood at the high platform and addressed the Council. "We have received reports from every sector. The situation is critical. We must take action." Kravas of the Thomases was one of the few who still resisted. His scales showed stubborn red. "We cannot appear weak. If we beg the humans to return, every species will see it as surrender." "Surrender to what?" demanded Myras of the Quellan. Her water suit bubbled with agitation. "To reality? To the consequences of our own decisions? We made a mistake, Kravos. A terrible mistake. And continuing to deny it only makes it worse." "The humans disrespected our traditions," Kravos argued. "But even he sounded less certain than before." "They improved our lives," Myra shot back. "They solved our problems. They protected our people. And we punished them for being different." A new voice spoke up. It was Sylvan of the Eula, the plant-like species that had tried to defend humanity during the original vote. Sylvan was young for a council member, but they spoke with quiet authority. "I opposed the vote 1 year ago," Sylvan said. "I was one of 7 species that tried to protect humanity's membership. Do you remember what Kravas said to us then? He said we were weak. He said humans were our pets. He said we would see how we managed without them." Sylvan paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We have seen, and now we know. We were not weak for valuing what humans contributed. We were wise. The truly weak ones were those who could not accept that humans had become equals, who needed to diminish others to feel superior themselves. The chamber went silent. Crevass's scales shifted to embarrassed purple, but he said nothing. We punished humans for being different, Sylvan continued, for solving problems in ways we did not understand, for succeeding where we expected them to fail. We mistook their willingness to help for desperation to be accepted. We thought they needed us, another representative spoke, but they did need us. They used our manufacturing, our atmospheric processors, our technologies. They used those things, Sylvan agreed, but they did not need them. Look at what they have built in their home system this past year. They have replaced everything they lost. And in some cases, they have built better versions. They adapted. We are the ones who cannot adapt. We are the ones who are failing. The truth of those words settled over the council like a heavy weight. Long-range scans of human space showed incredible development. Massive orbital habitats, advanced shipyards, research stations that dwarfed anything in Council space, energy signatures indicating technology Council did not recognize. Humanity had taken the resources and knowledge they had gained over 3 centuries and focused it all inward. Without the need to compromise with 47 different species, without the need to follow ancient traditions that made no sense, they were advancing at incredible speed. Intelligence. Officer Kung Su had submitted a final report before resigning his position. The report was 1 sentence long. In 5 years, humanity will not need the Council at all. In 10 years, we will need them desperately. Elmarath called for order. We must vote. The measure is simple. We formally apologize to humanity for the unjust revocation of their Council membership. We invite them to return as full members, with all rights and privileges restored. All in favor? The lights appeared on the voting board. This time, they were all green. 47 species. Unanimous. Even Crevasse had voted yes. His scales showed resigned gray. The vote passes, Velmorith announced. I will personally deliver the message to Earth. The message was composed carefully. It acknowledged mistakes. It offered genuine apology. It emphasized how much humanity was valued and missed. It invited them to return, not as subordinates, but as equals. It was the message that should have been sent a year ago. Velmorith sent it with a priority flag. Then the Council waited. 3 days passed. Then a response came from Secretary Jawan. Velmorith opened it in the Council chamber, with all representatives present. The message appeared on the central display. To the Galactic Council, it read, Humanity acknowledges receipt of your message and appreciates the Council's reconsideration of its previous decision. We recognize that this vote represents significant change in Council perspective, and we do not take it lightly. The Council members leaned forward. This sounded promising. The message continued. However, we have found our period of isolation to be productive and enlightening. We have developed new capabilities and new perspectives on our place in the galaxy. We have built a society that reflects human values without compromise. Velmorith's light patterns shifted to worried colors. Therefore, humanity respectfully declines the Council's invitation to return to full membership at this time. We will remain in our home system for the foreseeable future. We wish the Council well in addressing its current challenges. There was more. Perhaps in time we might reconsider a relationship with the Council. But such a relationship would need to be built on actual mutual respect rather than conditional tolerance. It would need to recognize humanity as equals from the beginning, not as subordinates who must constantly prove their worth. Until that time, we choose silence over diminishment. We choose independence over acceptance on terms we find unacceptable. We hope the Council finds solutions to its current difficulties. We bear no ill will, but we will not return simply because our absence has become inconvenient for others. The message ended with a formal closure. With respect, Secretary Jawan, on behalf of the United Government of Humanity. Velmorith read the message 3 times. Around the chamber, representatives sat in stunned silence. They had expected humans to jump at the chance to return. They had expected gratitude. They had expected desperate acceptance. Instead, they got dignified refusal. They said no, whispered Thesser of the Ven, their voice full of static shock. They said no, confirmed Velmaroth. Crevasse stood abruptly. This is an insult. They should be grateful we are giving them another chance. Another chance. Myra snapped. Listen to yourself. We cast them out unjustly. They rebuilt their entire civilization in 1 year. They proved they do not need us. And you think they should be grateful we are willing to let them come back? What do we do now? Asked a smaller species representative. Velmarath had no answer. The council had played its last card and lost. Humans were not coming back. It's not now. Maybe not ever. The galaxy would have to learn to function without them. Some species would manage, others would not. Trade routes would be reestablished slowly and painfully. Medical knowledge would be rebuilt over decades. Security would improve eventually. Infrastructure would be repaired, but it would take years, maybe decades. And it would never be as efficient as it had been with humans as part of the system, because humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization. They had been the part that made all the other parts work together. In the silence that followed Jawan's message, the council finally understood the full price of their pride. They had assumed humans needed the council more than the council needed humans. They had been wrong. And by the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. Humanity had been willing to be partners. The council had insisted on masters and servants. So humanity had walked away. Not in anger, but in dignity. And in that quiet departure, they had left a hole that could not be filled.